Hello everyone, this is the CircuitPython weekly meeting for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. It's the time of the week when we get together to talk about all things CircuitPython. I'm Dan, and I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python designed to run on tiny computers called microcontrollers. CircuitPython development is primarily sponsored by Adafruit, so if you want to support Adafruit and CircuitPython, consider purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. This meeting is hosted on the Adafruit Discord server. You can join anytime by going to adafru.it/discord. We hold the meeting in the CircuitPython dev text channel and the CircuitPython voice channel. Typically, this meeting is on Mondays at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. U.S. Pacific Time, except when there's a U.S. holiday. In the notes doc, there's a link to a calendar that you can view online or add to your favorite calendar app so you can get reminded. We also send notifications about upcoming meetings via Discord. So if you'd like to receive these notifications, ask us to add you to the @CircuitPythonistas Discord role. As I mentioned, there's a shared notes document. There's a pinned post at the top of CircuitPython dev where there's a little push pin. Just click on that and you can look at the note. You can find a link to the notes document. This notes document is a Google Doc right now that accompanies the meeting and recording. You can contribute to this document beforehand. The final notes document includes timestamps to go along the video, so you can use the document timestamps to skip around and view the parts of the video that interest you most. The meeting tends to run 30 to 60 minutes. After each meeting, we post a link for the next meeting's notes document to the CircuitPython dev channel on the Adafruit Discord. Check the pinned messages to find the latest notes doc, because I already talked about this. If you wish to participate but cannot attend, you can leave hug reports and status updates in the document for us to read during the meeting. The meeting is held in 5 parts: community news, state of CircuitPython, libraries and Blinka, hug reports, status updates, and finally in the weeds. And we'll explain each of those sections as we go along. So now I'll get started with the actual content of the meeting. The first major section is community news. This information comes from the weekly Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, created and edited by Anne, who's in the chat right now. This newsletter goes out on Monday mornings, so subscribe to it, and you can find even more of the news than this. So I'll start with these news items, and then I'll explain more about the newsletter. So the first item I have is that CircuitPython 9.2.4 was released last week. It's the latest bug fix revision of CircuitPython, and it's a new stable release. There are links in the release notes for a blog entry and GitHub release notes. They're the same thing. Significant highlights in this release, so that would be updated frozen modules, including a fix for the Adafruit requests library, which is frozen in on a few boards like the PyPortal. In audio filters, distortion was added, and also LFO ticking. CAN-IO support was added for i.mx boards. And we fixed 2 crashes, an RP2 Pico DVI crash that caused the previous release not to work, and also some USB problems on STM, which caused those builds not to work either. So we have more builds that are now working, and you don't have to use previous versions. Next item is about the Espressif ESP32C5. The engineering samples of this chip are out. This is the first. This is a new chip from Espressif that's RISC-V based, as are the other C chips. But it uniquely currently supports both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi 6, along with Bluetooth and 802.15.4. So this is new that they can support dual band stuff on both common Wi-Fi bands. So you can read more about it in the news in the notes. And finally, for this week, let's note that We released a milestone with the pull request issue number on GitHub. We got to number 10,000. There was a pull request made by Jeff, which was number 10,000. So both those numbers are used both for issues and pull requests. So it doesn't mean we have 10,000 pull requests. It doesn't mean we have 10,000 issues. But we had 5,000 merged PRs sometimes last year. And we currently have 5,143 merged PRs. So out of the 10,000, there are more PRs than issues, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so let me explain more about the newsletter. As I mentioned, these news items are selected from the Python and Microcontrollers weekly newsletter. You can subscribe to this newsletter by going to adafruitdaily.com. If you have any Python and hardware projects to share or find content you'd like to see included, please contribute to the newsletter. You can contribute in a number of different ways. You can just email cpnews@adafruit.com. You can tag a post with hashtag CircuitPython on Mastodon, Blue Sky, or X. Or you can send in a pull request to GitHub. There is a repo for the newsletter, and so you could submit a pull request against the next issue's draft if you'd like to. Any of those things are fine. Do it whichever is the most convenient way for you. All right. Next up, we have the next major section is the state of CircuitPython libraries and Blinka. This is a quantitative overview of the entire CircuitPython project. It gives us a chance to look at the health of the project separate from our status updates. We'll talk about the project overall and then separately discuss the core, the libraries, and Blinka. So first of all, overall, in the past week, we had 26 pull requests merged by 15 authors. There are some new folks that I haven't seen submitting that many things. Not Jay Posada, he's a regular, but Timeline 8 and Noel Anderson. I don't recognize those, and I'm sure there are other people who have submitted things. I'm doing editing in real time here, and maybe it's a mistake. Okay. And in the past week, we had 44 issues closed by 4 people and 9 opened by 9 people. I'll talk about why so many issues were closed. It's because I did a bit of a cleanup. So I'll read the core since Scott is not available today. In the CircuitPython core, which is the Adafruit CircuitPython repo on GitHub, there were 14 pull requests merged by 7 authors. There were 4 reviewers. There are now currently 21 open pull requests, which is less than a page. It's nice. It's all fits on a one GitHub page. There were 42 issues closed by 2 people and 4 opened by 4 people. There are now 745 open issues, and there are 7 active milestones. We keep track of like which things we want, which kind of work enhancements and bug fixes we want to target for which release. Right now, there are 16 open issues on 10.0. Those are things that we want to work on when we start working on 10.0. And they're, in many cases, there are things that are incompatibility, so we don't want to make those changes now. There are 7 open issues for 9.2x and 53 open issues for 9xx. So some of the things in 9xx may be deferred for longer if they seem less important, but 9.2x are sort of hot issues right now. There are 17 open issues that have to do with libraries that have been requested or suggested. There are 616 open issues on long term, 21 issues that are marked as support, which we're not sure whether they're a bug or not, and 15 that are marked as third party, which means they depend on somebody else to help fix them, that we can't necessarily proceed without that happening. And there are 0 issues that were not assigned a milestone. There was one, but I triaged it when I saw there was one. And next up, we have the state of the libraries. And if Tim, if you're available, go ahead with that.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This section covers all of the CircuitPython libraries, which are split into two main halves: the Adafruit libraries, which are in the Adafruit bundle, and the community libraries, which are made and maintained by third-party members of the community, which live over in the community bundle. Currently, we have 348 Adafruit libraries and 154 community libraries in the bundle, which gives us a total of 502 when we combine them together. Over the past week, we had 9 pull requests merged in the Adafruit libraries. I believe that stat is 4. We had 8 authors for those 9 pull requests, so thank you to our authors. The names which were newer or less frequent or just didn't stand out to my eye as occurring in this list very frequently this week were Timeline 8, Noel Anderson, and Brian E&G. So thanks to those folks, as well as our other contributors whose names do pop up a little bit more frequently here. We had 6 reviewers this week, mostly the same folks who are usually around. So thank you to all of our reviewers. Of the pull requests that were merged this week, they were all pretty much on the newer side of things, with the oldest one clocking in at 4 days and the newest several down at 1 day as usual. That leaves us after the week with 61 pull requests open. The oldest one of those is a draft that's 900 days. The newest one is 1 day. And issues-wise, we had a slow week. No issues closed this week, with 5 new issues opened up by 5 people. So that leaves us at the end of the week with 687 issues that are open overall. And there are 3 of those currently that are labeled Good First Issue, which you would be able to find listed over at circuitpython.org/contributing, which is the website where you should head if you are interested in getting involved in CircuitPython. Particularly if you want to get involved in the development, what we tend to point folks towards first is actually reviewing. So on that page, circuitpython.org/contributing, when it first loads up, you'll see a list of open PRs, which are pull requests, links over to GitHub where someone has proposed to make a change to a particular library, and those are waiting for someone to come along and review them, and that could be you if you are interested in doing so. What we ask you to do there, if you want to get involved in that process, is just click through to the GitHub link, take a look at the change, look at the code for syntax, spelling, anything like that you can spot. If you do have the hardware for whatever library that was, and you're able to hook it up, then go ahead and do that. Give it a try with the changed version of the library, and then leave a comment there on GitHub letting us know how it went. If you were able to hook up the hardware, what did you find? How did it work? What devices did you test on? That sort of stuff. As well as what you found when you looked over the code in that same comment. And if you get comfortable with that process and you would like to get leveled up to leave official reviews over on GitHub, we can work with you to do that, although the comments are just as good, truthfully. So if you would like to try tackling an actual change yourself, one of the things you can do on that same page, circuitpython.org/contributing, near the top there are a couple of navigation links. If you click over to issues, you will see a similar page, which is a link to a bunch of issues now over on GitHub. The difference here is that these ones don't have a proposed change yet. These are waiting for a person to come along who would like to work on the proposed change. So again, that could be you if you want to get involved. You could take a look through that list, find something that is interesting to you or that you've got the hardware for, click through to GitHub, read about the issue, figure out what it is, if it's a bug fix or a new feature or what have you, and then submit your own pull request that has the changes that resolve that feature, either fixes the bug or adds the new feature, new example, or whatever it may be. If you need help with any part of that process, we have a guide for contributing to CircuitPython using Git and GitHub. We also have folks who are around throughout the week here on Discord, so if you would like to get involved but you are having trouble with any part of the process, whether that's version control or any of the actions checks or anything else, please just come say hi on Discord. Let us know what you're up to and what you're running into, and someone will be happy to help you out. In terms of library updates in the last 7 days. I'll leave you with a couple of stats. Notably, the new libraries this week are over in the community bundle. There is a driver for the SF3000, which is a air velocity sensor, and there is also a new library for game controls for making little sort of portable video games, not worrying about the different types of hardware for the controls. So check that stuff out if you are interested. And that is what we've got for libraries this week. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tim. And I would just note, I think, as noted in the newsletter, we're up over 500 libraries, which I think is a combination of Adafruit-sponsored libraries and community libraries. So that's great. All right. Next is Blinka section. Blinka is our compatibility layer for CircuitPython. It runs on single-board computers like Raspberry Pi. So you write code that looks like CircuitPython code. It actually is running under regular Python, known as CPython, confusingly. The C is not for Circuit. And it's a compatibility library. And in the past week, there were 3 pull requests merged by 2 authors with 3 reviewers. There are 17 open pull requests. A few are really old, but there are a lot that are not so old, and that's good. There were 2 issues closed by 2 people and 0 opened by 0 people. There are now 124 open issues in the Adafruit Blinka repository, and in the past month there have been 24,000, or like 24,000, about almost 24,100 PyWheels downloads. The number of boards that are currently supported is 146 under Blinka, which is fantastic. Okay. Next up is Hug Reports. So where am I typing that? There we go. So what is Hug Reports? It's a chance to highlight folks in the CircuitPython community and beyond for doing awesome things. I'll start, and then we'll run down the list of reports alphabetically. If you are text only or are missing the meeting, I'll read your notes when I get them to them in the list. So first of all, I'll start, as I mentioned, I'd like to thank ADCC, who's systematically debugging slow network performance and making some very interesting observations. This is work in progress, but it's really worthwhile. Thanks to Timeline 8 for a thorough report on an ESP32 S2 I2C problem. I'm going to look at that soon. And thanks to TAC, who's getting Tiny USB ready to be used under Zephyr, which is really exciting. Next up, I'll read DJ Devon. Thanks to Timeline and Discord for responding to a request for updating their playground note. Thanks to Axel Magnus for taking an interest in a font I made and learning about FontForge. Thanks to Dan H., Alpakenin, Anecdata, and Neradoc, and many others for helping people in Discord. And thanks to Blitz City DIY for the turntable async I/O code. Credit to the Ruiz brothers for their beautiful mechanics and aesthetics. It's a wonderful project. And now next up is Tim with Hug Reports.
All right. Yes. Thanks, Dan. I would like to give Hug Reports this week to Paul Cutler. Thanks for interviewing me for an upcoming episode of the CircuitPython show. Thanks to Maker Melissa for working on some fixes in the web editor. Thanks to Jeff for paving the way on the Raspberry Pi 5 to do RGB matrix panels, which I have been playing with the last couple of days, and a group hug. Thanks to everyone here for being awesome.
All right. Thank you. Next up, I've got 2 more people, and I'll just read theirs. First of all, Scott says, gives a group hug, and then Relic SE, thanks to Gambler21, and Jepler for the great reviews on audio effects related PRs. So now next up, we've got status updates. It's our time to tell folks what we're up to individually. I'll start with status updates, and then we'll go through the list alphabetically as before. And when I call on you, you can take a couple of minutes to talk about what you've been doing since the last meeting and what you'll be doing until the next meeting. If a discussion becomes too long for status updates, we can move it to the In the Weeds section. All right. So I'll say, first of all, for some reason, starting on Friday and continuing on Saturday, I went through all the open CircuitPython issues. I do this every year or two, and I ended up closing about 36 of those issues and commented on a bunch more, including linking some of them together, like this might be related to that and so forth. So I think there were about 770 or 80 issues, and I managed to close maybe 36 or 40 of them. So 5%, that's about the same that I did last time. And it's not a lot, but it helps me kind of see what's up, what's stale, and what things might be related, and what things are kind of hotter as issues than other things. So I thought it was worthwhile. After that, I fixed a light sleep issue on Raspberry Pi 2 2040, that is 2040 and 2350. And also Bablock B has a PR in progress to add sleep for RP2350, and they looked at my PR, and the results of those things, or the code in those, will be combined. I fixed a few documentation bugs, and I improved the CircuitPython issue submission template. So when you click new issue and it says what kind, the one for bugs was actually not explicitly asking you for what board you were running on, and I changed that and fixed the grammar and a few other things and some other things. And finally, I'm continuing to work on the Nina FW firmware, which is used in the airlift boards. This is not CircuitPython code. It's a combination of ESP, IDF, and Arduino code, but we need to fix some problems that have to do with using more modern kinds of encryption, and it's worth doing this work. I spent like an hour or two trying to figure out. I was sort of having trouble getting anything to work, and then I realized that a ground jumper had been mysteriously removed from my setup, and I had to put it back, and then it worked a lot better. It was sort of half working, and I think it was because it was doing grounding through the USB plugs of two different things that I was working on, but it wasn't that reliable. All right. Next up is DJ Devon, and I'll read theirs. DJ Devon says, figured out how to automate Font Forge to create a font with a list of pixel sizes at the same time. This is something that I believe should be added to the Ruiz Brothers Font Forge Learn Guide. This is the primary guide I've always used when occasionally making fonts. I never learned how to easily make multiple fonts of the same size because it's not in the guide. So sure, if you've submitted that as a feedback item, we'll pass that along. And then secondly, worked on an NTP RTC function example. The function supports a time zone offset and a secondary manual offset, specifically designed for helping to program an alarm clock. Next up is ADCC, who says, working on an interesting RP2 network performance bug, which is issue 9837. It's given me a chance to exercise my RAM logging facility. That's another PR that ADCC has in process that looks really interesting. With the debug build and intensive logging, I'm able to capture a large trace of network activity without impacting network performance. So sounds very useful and exciting. And now, next up, we've got Foamy Guy. Tim.
All right, thanks, Ken. I have been largely in the Raspberry Pi land for the last couple of days, working on the RGB matrix panel stuff, trying to build a couple of new examples, and then I'll be working on documentation for a Learn Guide up next. A couple of the things that I have managed to make them do is supporting multiple panels in a couple of different configurations, and up to 2x2, so 4 total panels is the biggest I've gone so far. I have gotten MP4 videos playing through VLC and mirrored onto the matrix. I have gotten some scrolling text examples that pull text from web APIs. I started with the Adafruit Quotes API, but it'd be super easy to swap in weather or news or anything else that you want to scroll past on your matrix. And then I've made a couple others that are more just for fun to look at that utilize PIL just to draw pretty shapes and colors and stuff. The two that are most interesting and fun to me were one that's like a rainbowy snake that kind of roams around the screen that makes use of the Rainbow IO module. And then another one that implements a graphical thing called metaballs, which turns out to look kind of like plasma or a lava lamp is the visual effect I'm after, which I think will turn out looking pretty cool on the Matrix. I tried also to get it to play Doom and have that come out of the Matrix, as well as use Pygame, which is a common Python library for making video games. Both of those have been unsuccessful so far. I can get output to the HDMI, but not the Matrix panel. If anyone listening happens to know a lot about Raspberry Pi 5 display stack, hit me up. I could use a little bit of help in that land. But yeah, next up we'll be writing the documentation for that stuff, and then really the only other thing that I did in the last couple of days was some library PRs, mostly on library reviews, I should say, adding the PRs were adding new display.io examples. Belated hug report as well, I should mention, to Jose David, who added a bunch of those. Appreciate that. And that's what I've been up to. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Okay. Next up is Scott, who's out for the afternoon because, as he says, Ari is home with a low fever, so I'm working from home when I can until he's back at daycare. Got Wi-Fi scanning working on the NRF 7002 DK. Intended on continuing that, but got distracted polishing build stuff. The build, that he means the Zephyr build, is in much better shape now. CI runs and Zephyr jobs pass. The Nordic job is broken due to NRFX version mismatch between new tiny USB and our ports implementation. But I know Scott is working on this. We'll hack the Nordic build so it passes and then PR it all. All right, and that is it for status updates. Our last section is In the Weeds, which is an opportunity for a long-form discussion that either come out of the status updates or that folks have identified ahead of time. If you have any In the Weeds topics, please make sure they get added while we're discussing other things so we're not waiting around to see if anyone has something to ask. All right, so first we've got DJ Devon, who's text only, who says, currently there's no way to leave feedback on a playground note like you can with a Learn guide. The playground system has now been around long enough to where some notes are becoming outdated and there's no way to contact the author to update their note. So I saw this early this morning, and so I decided to ask the Learn guide developers who also work on the playground notes. And their thoughts were that they saw that playground notes are kind of maybe more temporary, and they were also worried about people getting comments that sort of like they're uncontrolled comments, which may be problematic, for rudeness or whatever. And so I had said maybe there would be maybe some ways to deal with that, but I'm not sure. If anyone has any opinions on that, like whether they feel that playground notes do age, or whether you can think of a mechanism for getting in touch with an author that would prevent them getting spammed, or something, like I said, it'd have to be from a login user. You could speak up now, or bring it up in Discord and we can pass it on to the Learn developers. I do think that there needs to be some way of mentioning things to people, but how to do that in a controlled way is not a solved problem yet. Does anybody have any other comments?
My only real thought, I think it's a tricky problem to try and solve, unfortunately, but my only real thoughts are like maybe we could tell authors they could volunteer if they want to put like a Discord handle or something, and then maybe we have some boiler text that says something like, this author has chosen to add the Discord handle, so if you'd like to send them a message about this guide, then join the Adafruit Discord. They've indicated that they're okay to get pinged for that reason. That would kind of bring the communication back into a channel that's already moderated and already part of the code of conduct and everything. But it's still tricky because then they could just also choose to DM or something instead. So there's no real guarantee that they actually take the path we really try to set for them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that we do occasionally get spam in things. I think also maybe even just, yeah, I mean, if there's some mechanism, I'm not sure. That's a good idea, but a cross thing to Discord might be interesting. Yeah. And I think maybe we'll have further discussions about this. Okay. Let me also, I'll move on now to a thing that I brought up, which is whether it's time to stop updating the 8x library bundle and otherwise deprecate 8x. There are some sort of things that we need to do to kind of clean up and put it away and just leave 9 as the main release. There's a checklist of things to do that's in issue 9001 in the CircuitPython repo. You could look at that. Scott wrote, "Yep, this would free us up to do 10x pre-releases. Maybe we want to branch for it. I suspect we'll keep 9x stable for a while, though." So does anybody have any opinion about plus or minus about discontinuing the 8x? It's really mostly about the library bundles, and to some extent, maybe some links in Read the Docs. And Foamy Guy says in the comments, I am in favor of discontinuing 8x. So I think I'll go ahead with that and knock that off. It's been a while. Often in the past, we had the two previous versions around, but 9 has existed for longer than some of our other transition times. And there have been a lot of changes between 8 and 9, so we tend to only recommend 8 if there's some real significant problem. And the number of such people is small. So I think I'll take that as a recommendation. And so that's it. If there's nothing else, I don't see anything else, we'll wrap up. I'll mention next week's meeting is also on Monday. It's Monday, February 10th. 2025, again at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time or 11 a.m. U.S. Pacific Time. The meeting after that, so the meeting in 2 weeks, is going to be delayed one day due to a Monday U.S. holiday. So that meeting will be on Tuesday, February 18th, instead of the Monday before, just to let you know. And with that, I'll say good afternoon, good evening, or good morning to everybody. And I'll stop recording.